The silence in the apartment, after John left for work, was a living thing. Margot would sit in her armchair, the one facing the door, and listen to it. For 30 years, this silence had been comfortable, filled with the ghost of her husband's cough, the echo of her son's childhood laughter. Now, it felt expectant, waiting to be broken by the wrong key in the lock. Kate's key. Margaret had watched her son make it, his hands careful. Just for now, Mom, until we find our own place. That was 6 months ago. The key was a promise broken, a boundary crossed. It represented the invasion of everything Margaret had built and preserved since her husband's heart gave out at his desk. Kate was not what she had imagined. Marguerite had pictured someone softer. A teacher, perhaps, or a nurse. Someone who understood sacrifice. Kate was a project manager. She managed spreadsheets, timelines, people. She spoke indecisive, clipped sentences. She wore clothes that had no soft edges. Margaret felt assessed by her and found lacking. The first skirmish was not about anything important. It was about the good towels, the ones Margaret kept in the closet for guests. Kate, fresh from a shower, used one. Margaret found it damp on the rack. "Those are the guest towels," she said, her voice light, almost singing. Kate blinked. A towel is a towel. It's clean. The logic was alien, offensive. John tried to mediate. "Mom, it's okay. We'll buy new ones." We. The word was a tiny needle. There was no mom in that we. It was a new alliance, formed right under her roof. She smiled, a tight stretch of lips. "Of course, dearie, don't worry about it." But she took the towel, washed it with extra care, and put it back in the closet, a shrine to order. The kitchen became her fortress. Kate tried to cook. Tried was the word Margaret used in her mind. It was all quinoa bowls and kale salads that looked like decorative arrangements, not food. John would eat it, praising the flavor profile. Margaret would wait. She would wait until he looked vaguely unsatisfied, then bring out a small plate. "I made a little extra stroganoff." "Johnny, you loved it as a boy." The smell was a time machine. Beef, sour cream, paprika. The smell of his father's payday Fridays. John's eyes would flicker. He'd take a bite, then another. Kate would watch, her fork pushing greens around. Margaret would not look at her. The victory was in the quiet chewing. She began to remember things aloud, not to John, but to the air, while Kate was within earshot. "Your father proposed right at this table. He was so nervous, he spilled his tea. Or you cried for a week when your first hamster died. I had to hold you all night." Stories that built a wall of shared history, thick and impenetrable. Kate was on the outside. John started working later. Margaret knew it wasn't just work. It was the pressure in the apartment, thick as fog. He'd come home, shoulders slumped, and give them both a strained smile. He was a peacekeeper without a peace to keep. Margaret saw his fatigue and felt a pang quickly smothered. This was for his own good. He just couldn't see it. Yet, one Tuesday, Kate brought home a modern, abstract painting, a swirl of gray and blue. "For the living room wall, it needs some life," she said. The wall held a portrait of John in his graduation gown. Margaret's finest hour. She didn't speak. She just looked at John. He stammered. Maybe the hallway." The painting went to the bedroom. "A retreat." A retreat. The Cold War had its routines. Margaret's headaches always struck when John and Kate were planning an evening out. "Don't mind me, dears. I'll just lie down." John's face would crumple with concern. He'd cancel reservations. Kate would go silent, her anger a cold radiation. Margaret would sip tea in the dim room, listening to the stifled argument through the wall. She found her ultimate weapon in the basement. A box labelette. Joan, childhood. She brought it up, dust and all. That evening, she began the excavation. Report cards, clumsy clay figurines, a lock of blonde hair. Look at this, Johnny. Your first tooth. Kate sat on the sofa, a captive audience to a history she had no part in. It was the photo album that did it. Margaret turned to a page of a beach vacation. John, age 7, burrowed in sand, laughing. She, younger, vibrant, smiling at the camera. Her husband, a blurry figure in the background. A perfect triangle. We were so happy, she whispered, her voice thick. Then, even quieter, as if to herself, a complete family. She saw Kate flinch. The girl stood up abruptly. I need some air. The door closed behind her. John looked from the album to the door, torn. Mom. He started. Oh, go after her, Margaret said. Wabina and the picture of I'm just being sentimental. He went. She stayed, touching the photo. The trap was set. The next few days were brittle. Kate spoke only when necessary. John moved through the apartment like a ghost. Margaret tended to her plants, humming. She was waiting for the explosion, the big fight where Kate would demand to leave, showing her true, selfish colors. John would see. He would choose. Would stay. The explosion never came. Kate's anger didn't erupt. It solidified. She became a polite, efficient stranger. She packed her suitcase with calm precision on a Thursday evening. Marguerite watched from the kitchen doorway, her heart beating a strange, frantic rhythm. This was it. The culmination. John was at the store. Kate zipped the bag shut and turned. She looked at Margaret, not with rage, but with a profound, weary understanding. You win, she said simply. He's all yours. She placed her key on the hall table. The click of metal on wood was deafening. Then she was gone, pulling her suitcase behind her, a quiet exit. When John returned, carrying grocery bags, the silence told him everything. He saw the key. His face went ashen. Where is she? Margaret adopted a look of gentle concern. She left, darling. She said she felt like a third wheel. Such a strange thing to say in a family home. She moved to take the bags. I made your favorite. He didn't hand her the bags. He let them drop to the floor. A carton of milk burst open, a white flood spreading on the tiles. He didn't notice. He stared at the key. What did you say to her? His voice was low, unfamiliar. Me? Nothing, darling. I was just showing the old photos. What did you say, Mom? The question was a roar. She recoiled. This was not her script. He was supposed to be sad, then relieve it, then grateful. Not this towering, shaking stranger. I just said we were a complete family. It's true. John let out a sound, a half-laugh choked with pain. Complete. Dad's gone. I'm a grown man. That family is dead, Mom. And you just buried my future next to it. He walked to the window, his back to her. His shoulders were rigid. You've been doing this for months. Every sigh, every headache, every story. 1,000 little cuts. You didn't want me happy. You wanted me here. Frozen. Like one of your damn photos. Each word was a stone dropped into the quiet pond of her victory, shattering the reflection. She's the best thing that ever happened to me, he said, his voice cracking, and you made her feel like an intruder in her own home. Because to you, she was. He turned. His eyes were red, but dry. The emptiness in them was worse than tears. I have to find her. I have to try and fix what you broke. He picked up his car keys. The mundane action was final. John, wait, the apartment. Your dinner. The words were pathetic, childish. He paused at the door. For a second, hope flared in her chest. It will stay, He would forgive. He looked at her, and his gaze held no love, only a devastating clarity. "Goodbye, Mom." The door closed. Not a slam. A soft, definitive seal. The kind you put on a tomb. Margaret stood in the white river of spilled milk, staring at the door. The silence rushed back in, but it was different now. It wasn't waiting. It had arrived. It was complete. It filled the space where a son is a life had. Bane, hours later, she was still standing there. The milk had dried sticky on the tiles. The key gleamed under the hall light. She walked over, picked it up. It was cold, just a piece of metal. All her planning, her tactics, her love, twisted into strategy, had won her this. A cold key and a silence so absolute, it hummed in her ears. She wandered to the living room. The graduation portrait smiled at her. The boy in it was gone. The man had walked out. The album lay open on the sofa. The happy family on the beach. She saw it now not as a memory, but as a cave. She had tried to put him back inside it. She had succeeded, and in doing so, she had lost him forever. The beast inside her, the one that had purred with every small victory, was silent. It had eaten its fill and left only a hollow, aching shell. She understood, with a certainty that felt like dying, that she had not protected her son. She had imprisoned him. And love was the name she had given to the bars. The phone rang later that night. She lunged for it, heart leaping. John. But it was a sister, Barbara, just checking in. "Margie, you sound strange." Margaret opened her mouth to say, "Everything's fine." The lie wouldn't come. A dry, ragged sob escaped instead. "Barbara," she whispered, "I think I've made a terrible mistake." The confession, once started, was a flood. She spoke of the towels, the borscht, the photos, the calculated size. She did not paint herself as a victim. For the first time, she narrated her own actions, as they were, a campaign. On the other end, Barbara listened, not with judgment, but with a sad, knowing silence. "Oh, Margie," Barbara finally sighed. "You loved him so much, you forgot to let him live." It was the simplest, most brutal truth. Margaret hung up and sat in the dark. The apartment was no longer a fortress. It was a crime scene, and she was both the perpetrator and the only remaining victim. Dunn found her at the kitchen table, a pen in her hand, a blank notepad. She wrote, "Dear John," then stopped. What could she say? "I'm sorry it was a pebble against the mountain of our interference." She wrote instead, "I was wrong. Kate makes you happy. That is all that matters. Please, be happy." "Mom," she left the note by his key, which she placed back on the table. It was not a fix. It was an abdication, a surrender of the throne she had fought so hard to keep. She packed a small bag. She would go to Barbara's for a while, give him space, if he ever came back. As she locked the apartment door behind her, she felt a bizarre lightness. The burden of control was gone. She had nothing left to manipulate. No one left to guilt. She was just a woman, standing in a hallway, with a suitcase and a broken heart. The future was a terrifying, blank page. On the train to Barbaras, she watched the world blur past. Houses with lit windows, other people's lives, other people's families. She wondered if John had found Kate. She hoped, with a desperation that was a new kind of prayer, that he had. She hoped Kate was kinder than she had been. Barbara's spare room was small, floral, forgiving. Her sister asked no more questions, just made tea. "It will take time, Margie, for everything." Margaret nodded, sipping the hot, sweet liquid. It was the first real thing she had tasted in months. The first thing not laced with strategy or bitterness. Weeks, pass. The silence in her own apartment was replaced by the gentle sounds of her sister's life. TV, chatter, a dog barking. Life moving on. She waited for a call, a text. Nothing came. The not knowing was her punishment, and she accepted it. She had earned this void. Then, one rainy afternoon, an envelope arrived. Her name, in John's handwriting. Her hands shook so badly she could hardly tear it open. Not a letter. A photograph. A new one. Jon and Kate on what looked like a hiking trail. They were both windswept, smiling not at the camera, but at each other. They looked complete. Complete. On the back, in his hand, we found a place. It has a guest room. For when you're ready. No pressure. Just when you're ready. Jon and Kate, no forgiveness, spelled out. Just a door, left slightly ajar. A possibility, not a return to the past, but a fragile, terrifying bridge to a different future. Margaret held the photo to her chest and wept. They were not tears of victory, or even of relief. They were tears of release. The cage door was open. She could choose to stay inside with her ghosts, or she could step out into the uncertain, painful, beautiful world where her son lived his life, without her at the center. She looked at the picture again, at Kate's smile, directed at her son. It held no triumph, only happiness. Margaret took a deep, shuddering breath, the first breath of her new, uncharted life. It was time to learn how to be a mother. It was time to learn how to let go. The lesson was late, but it was not, perhaps, too late.